What if I told you that everything you know about vulnerability in the workplace is wrong? What if I told you that you actually should not be vulnerable at work? Well, I'm excited to announce that my brand new book, Leading with Vulnerability, is now available for pre-order. You can get your copy by going to leadwithvulnerability.com. Now, you might be thinking, if vulnerability inside of organizations is not a good thing, then what is? It turns out it's leading with vulnerability. And there is a difference between just being vulnerable versus leading with vulnerability. And the difference is that instead of just going to work and talking about mistakes or failures, you have to add the leadership piece to that. What I call the vulnerable leader equation. Competence, being good at your job, and connection. And that is what the book is about. How do you do it? How do you practice it? What are the world's top CEOs doing? Why don't we have more leaders who are being vulnerable at work? What happens if vulnerability is used against you? All of these things and a lot more are covered. So I hope you decide to pre-order your copy by going to leadwithvulnerability.com, and you'll get instructions on that page to get access to your bonuses.
Everything you're doing every day is actually helping you achieve your long-term goals.
I guess if you're not doing that, you shouldn't be doing it.
I think goals are effective. I need to have some kind of vision, thing I'm striving for in my life.
My guest today is Thibaut Meurisse, best-selling author of Master Your Emotions, a practical guide to overcome negativity and better manage your feelings. Almost 10,000 reviews on Amazon. Why should leaders be able to manage or master their emotions in an effective way?
I think there's two things. One is managing emotion and one is expressing emotion.
What's the number one thing that hurts a leader?
Sometimes you want to be right. This is who I am. This is my belief about the world, my belief about myself. And I want you to understand that I'm right. And that's really helpful most of the time.
Is it good or bad?
How can I become better? What can I learn from that situation? What's my plan? That's when you grow the most.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Great Leadership. My guest today is Thibaut Meurisse, best-selling author of Master Your Emotions, a practical guide to overcome negativity and better manage your feelings. Almost 10,000 reviews on Amazon. I wish I could get 10,000 reviews for my books. So clearly a very, very popular book, and it's not hard to understand why. Thibaut, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So did you know your book was going to be such a big hit when you wrote it?
Of course not. I think nobody knows. I mean, unless you're really, really famous. For me, I had actually many books. And that was book number 9 that I actually wrote. And for some reason, people liked the book and it started selling more and more over the years to the point where, as you say now, there are like close to 10,000 ratings. It's over 300,000 or 400,000 copies sold worldwide, I think.
That's crazy.
And it just keep expanding. So yeah, it's just impossible to predict.
Yeah.
I wish I could, because then I would do it again.
Yeah, of course. What is it about your book that you think is striking such a nerve with people? Because, obviously a lot of books have been written about emotions and feelings.
Yeah.
Why is your book in particular so popular, do you think? And what has anything happened with your book post-COVID that's really driven up sales over the past few years?
So what I can tell about my books in general is I try to have a few points in mind as I'm writing the books. So first, I want them to be really easy to read.
Yeah.
So that's why everybody can read the books. There's no trick, no complicated word. It's like very easy to understand. That's the first point. The second point is I want to talk about my own life in some ways so that people can actually relate to my story. So I guess if you're a doctor, maybe you have a PhD, it might be more about academic thing. For me, it's more about having a conversation with my readers. So it's more casual, easier to understand. And the third point is to make it very practical. Yeah. So I have exercises in the books. I have workbooks for each of my books. And people can actually download them for free and start doing the exercises. So that's, I would say the main points in the books, but I'm trying to keep in mind.
Yeah, and you mentioned you talk a little bit about your life as well. So what is it about your journey that got you to the point of writing a book about emotions? Was this something that you yourself were struggling with?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody is struggling with emotions. I mean, I don't think it's possible to be happy all the time, obviously. And I think as someone is trying to make it as a writer at the time and as an entrepreneur, you need to be really, I don't know if it's tough, but you want to be able to keep going no matter what, even if it's taking you months or years. And in that sense, I think being able to stay positive and optimistic every day, as often as possible over a long period of time, is what actually would help or helped me be successful.
Yeah.
And you can apply that then to different jobs or career or situations. But for me, it was kind of what I realized. If I want to be like happier and more productive and more creative, I want to feel better as much as I can. So that's when I start trying to understand what can I do to actually feel better in my day-to-day life.
Yeah, I suppose it's very hard if you have a full-time job or if you're an entrepreneur, if you're not feeling great, to then try to be innovative or creative or to sell or to build relationships or to do any of those things if your emotions aren't, in check. I mean, I feel that sometimes too, right? I mean, as a small business owner, if I'm not like mentally there, it's very hard for me to write. It could be challenging to give a talk. It could be hard to give a podcast, to create videos. If you're feeling a sense of like stress, anxiety, or unhappiness, or just exhaustion. So it really does play a role on how you work. There's a lot of talk about emotions and feelings, especially now inside of the organizations, but I don't know if we truly understand what is an emotion. So what are emotions if you had to explain that to somebody who's never heard of an emotion before?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. For me, it would be some sensation that you have, good or bad, that make you want to react in some ways. And it can be anger, it can be frustration, and it can be happiness. And then the question is, what do you do with that feeling or sensation that you have in your body when it arises? It arises, yeah. So that's more of a sensation. And then when you have a sensation, you might have different thoughts that will arise as well at the same time. That's when you start getting, messy.
Yeah,
the mind.
Yeah, the sensations and also the effect that it can have on your body, right? I mean, it's the actual chemicals releasing in your brain, things that can energize you, things that can deplete you. So I don't think a lot of people make that connection frequently between the emotions versus the actual physiological effects that those emotions have on your body. For example, let's say stress and cortisol, and how that, for example, could make you gain weight or make your heart beat faster or keep you from getting a good night's sleep. Like there's a lot of connection between the emotions and your actual physical body. So it's so important. Why do you think emotions are especially crucial for leaders? I can share my take on this, and I think it's really interesting because if you look back over the last, 10, 30, 40, 50 years, it used to be that your leaders didn't need to show emotion, right? I mean, the leader was kind of like the robot, was never, right? It was never happy. If they were angry, maybe they would throw something at you. Maybe they would show the angry emotions more than the happy emotions. But a lot of the stereotypes of leaders is kind of like the emotionless robot. And that's how a lot of our organizations were built or structured, where your leader kind of doesn't show their emotions. And this is becoming increasingly more and more what employees don't want. Like they want to work with a human being who they know has challenges and frustrations and hopes and dreams. So for me, one of the main reasons why emotions are so important for a leader is to be able to create that connection with your employees, to let them know that you are a human being. I think it builds trust. I think it creates psychological safety. I think these are good things inside of an organization. But what's your take on that? Why should leaders be able to manage or master their emotions in an effective way?
I think there's two things. One is managing emotion and one is expressing emotion.
Yeah.
So, you can manage your own emotions, but then you can also express them in a way that, people will see you as a human being.
Yep.
And I think, as you said, it's for trust as well, because I know for me as a writer would be, if people can relate to my story in a way, they can see, I am a human being. I'm part of, I'm the same species, right? Then they can relate and they can start listening to what I have to say. And I think it's the same with the CEO, with the leader of a corporation, a company. But you want to be able to be trusted. So if you can show people like, oh, I'm human as well. I'm in a sense I'm like you, and try to be you talk about being a model for a role model for for your employees or for your family. So I think as a leader you have to be this kind of person showing the way. In that sense, one aspect would be showing your emotions, expressing your emotions, and also being able to manage your own emotions, so that people can trust you and see you as someone who can lead the team.
Yeah, I think a lot of, employees look up to leaders, right? So if you as a leader are not able to master your emotions, it's going to be, I think it creates a hectic environment. I remember I interviewed the CEO of Verizon, Hans Vestberg, and I asked him what's most important for a leader to do. What's the most important quality of a leader? And he said being able to master your emotions, being able to know yourself, control yourself internally and externally, and the emotional piece is crucial because both during times of stress, right? You can't run around the company screaming, "Oh my God, I don't know what we're going to do. The company's going to go bankrupt." Similarly, when things are going well, you also can't just go crazy and like, "Oh, we closed a deal. Let's go crazy, buy a bunch of stuff," and you just
Yeah.
kind of live in this bubble. So it's important to,
Yeah.
I think, express those emotions of unhappiness or of sadness, but be able to have that kind of balance, right? Where you get back to a more normal state instead of living in the highs and living in the lows, which I think is very, very
Yeah.
crucial. Would you agree that that's an important kind of lesson for leaders to be able to be in that balance?
Yes, because I think it would be, you would kind of, how do you say, people would extrapolate that from it would like become worse and worse if you start being like too ecstatic or depressed, but would go through the entire corporation company, and I think it would get worse
Yeah.
in the entire organization if you don't know have your own emotions, manage your own emotions, and go too crazy in one way or the other, I guess.
So what's the downside of not being able to master your emotions? And I'm specifically really interested in a corporate environment. Like, emotions, this isn't something that we used to talk about inside of our organizations over the past few decades. I feel like, for the last few years, it's become much more prevalent, looking at emotional health, mental health, and well-being. But, like, for example, I look at my dad, and when he worked in an organization, nobody talked about emotions. Nobody was asking like, "Hey, how are you feeling? How are you doing? Are you stressed? Are you happy?" Like, nobody cared. It was just you show up to
Yeah.
work, you do your job, you take your feelings home with you at the end of the day. And so today, there's much more of that push towards emotions. Why do you think that is happening?
Maybe people are less willing to tolerate, being unhappy at a job or in their life in general,
Yeah.
and they might be aspiring for more. In that sense, being able to, go to work with some kind of meaning or connection with your employees, with your team, with your colleagues. So if you can express your emotions a little bit, at least you feel like you're part of the team, right? As opposed to being like not showing any emotions, because like who are you if you don't share emotions, as a human being,
Yeah.
good or bad, right?
Yeah.
So I think in general, you need, at least to some extent, we have to express our emotions. If we don't want to go, build whatever resentment or depression, sadness over time, frustration, it's good to have a way to express our emotions
Do you think
in the
it's important to
organization.
have some kind of like a balance though? And again, like in a work setting, right? Like how do you, like if you're having a bad day, you still can't just show up to work and just like maybe cry or throw things or so how do you manage or balance that in a corporate environment? Because it seems like it's a little bit different in a corporate environment versus a personal environment. So do you have any suggestions or advice on how to manage your emotions in a business setting? Or should you even be managing your emotions?
I don't think you can have a level of like intimacy that you would have in a relationship or in your family, but you don't want to, express your emotions and in a way to not build resentment, frustration, so that you can actually be productive in that sense. But if you really need like help, I think it's not where you're going to find it. Probably in some ways, like you might need to see maybe a therapist. So it might not be the place to really, express everything about yourself. And I guess crying, maybe all the time. It could happen. I guess
Yeah.
even like, leaders could cry, and I guess could be fine, could be okay in some settings. But yeah, I would say if it goes too far, I probably need to talk to someone else outside of the workplace.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the factors that influence emotion. So I think some of the things, food, sleep, exercise. I was reading a book. Do you know who Peter Attia is?
Oh yeah, I've been reading this book, like Outlive.
Oh
recently.
yeah. So I have that book.
Really, really good.
Yeah, so I've been reading it as
Yeah.
well. It's funny we're both reading it at the same time. It's so people not familiar with the book. It's what is it like? I don't know, 500 pages or something like that. It's a big book, and it's really a book about how to live, not necessarily a long life, but a maximum life, like how to get the most out of your years, longevity. And I've become very, very interested in that. And he talks a lot in that book about sleep, food, exercise. And surprisingly, one of the things that he talks about as being most crucial is this idea of emotional health and the role that plays on the physical body. So for you, when you think about how to manage your emotions, are these other elements important for you for as far as sleep, food, exercise? Like, what are the factors that you need to have?
Yeah, I think there are I think it's like 7 or 8 factors I would think of. So I'm trying to tell you now if I can recall all of them. It would be like what you think, so your thoughts, your environment, the food you eat, sleep, exercising, and probably your environment in a sense, like who you are hanging out with, what books you are reading, what content you are, what you're consuming in your day-to-day life. So it would be like the main element, I think, in terms of when you want to master your emotions, what you would want to take into account, and then work on each of them at your own pace and based on your needs.
Do you find that a lot of people neglect those things? Like they purely just think of emotions as kind of its own bubble that's disconnected from all these other elements?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. Like even like working out is, as you know now, it's really effective to improve your mood, but not everybody like realize to what extent it can help them to feel better, for instance, or food as well.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Like exercise, I start pretty much every single day, maybe with the exception of one day a week with exercise. And it makes such a huge difference on mood. Like if you're having a bad day, you exercise for an hour, you get on the treadmill, you go on the bike, and by the time you're done, you get all those happy chemicals floating around in your brain, and it's a completely different mood. Even my wife, after she exercises, if it's cold outside, she'll go jump in the pool, like a 60-degree pool.
Oh yeah.
And it completely transforms her. If she's having a bad day, even if it's cold outside, she's like, all right, I'm going in the pool. I'm like, oh man, that's pretty damn cold in there.
Yeah.
But she comes out and it's like a different person.
Yeah, I mean, the cold shower and cold swimming, I think it's quite effective. It's almost like it shut down your mind because it's so cold. Like you have to be, you have to breathe in a sense, be out of your body or out of your mind, in your body.
Yeah, there's a lot of science. I'm really fascinated behind the science of emotions because I think it used to be thought of, and I'm even talking to like my daughter about this, Naomi, and she's turning 7 this year. And you read these like kids books about managing your emotions and stuff like that. Little kids, sometimes they can get angry or unhappy and they have a difficult time managing their emotions. But there's like this whole science behind it of what to do and how to do it. Whereas I think in the past, we used to just think of it as, just go like close your eyes for a minute or go, tell yourself that you're happy. And it's not quite that simple. Like there are all these other elements in there that play such an important role that I think are huge. What for you has been the most effective thing as far as managing your emotions?
Yeah, so one would be, I think workout would be big, exercising, working out, and any kind of meditation as well. We didn't talk about that yet, but also meditation was one of the elements I didn't mention previously. So meditating, because in a sense, you want to be able to observe your thoughts so that you know what you're thinking, not always, but no, most of the time. Because most of our emotions as well come also from what we think. And I don't think people realize also to what extent what they think is so bad, in a sense. And that's really helpful most of the time.
Yeah.
So for me, it would be working out, any kind of routine you can do every day, I think, to structure your day as well. I think having structure in your life is really important. And every time I go out of a routine or I don't work or don't do something for a few days or a few weeks, I just start feeling bad about myself. So at least for me, I need a structure, and I think that's what most people need in their life. So something they can do, like habits, daily habits, they can do every day. Meditation can be, working out, walking. Walking is great too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what would be, for me, the most effective.
So it's interesting that habits. So why do habits play an important role in emotions? Because that's I think that's a very interesting point.
I think it's conditioning. Like if you condition your mind, like if you do some gratitude exercises every day, for instance, focusing on what you're grateful for, then over time, that's what you're going to find out in your life. What you focus on, you kind of attract, or you begin to think of more.
Yeah.
So that's more of a conditioning thing. So if you keep focusing on what you want, what you like, what you're grateful for on a day-to-day basis, over time it becomes kind of your baseline or what you're used to do. So I guess would be, technically speaking, might be some kind of neuroplasticity, like reprogramming your mind, your brain physically by your action conditioning every day over time.
So what does your routine look like?
Oh, it has changed a lot. These days, to be honest, I was kind of out of routines for a while. I was traveling, and I actually felt that I wasn't at my happiest, let's say,
Yeah.
because of lack of routine. But before that, this year I had a lot of, I have going to a cafe 8 a.m. in the morning, doing some writing, and going back home at 10, grabbing the salads, eating the salads, which were very healthy, working again until 4 or 5. Also going to the gym 3 times a week, which I'm doing now as well. So yeah, and writing my goals every day. I would do in the morning, for goals for the day, starting my day writing. Yeah.
And you found
that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's made a difference for you, huh?
I mean, for me, every time I have a routine consistently for a long period of time, I am more productive.
Yeah.
But at some time, you feel sometimes you want to do something different for a while or experiment. So what I would do, and then come back to some routines, or maybe change a little bit the routine over time.
It's funny because, my wife and I travel frequently for work, and we were recently on a trip for 8 days. We went to New Orleans and Austin, Texas. And, when you're traveling, you don't have a routine. Like everything is kind of all over the place. The only routine that we try to do is try to exercise in the morning. But beyond that, everything is just kind of crazy. And I remember towards like the end of the trip, my wife is just like, wow, this feels chaotic. I'm excited to get back to our home.
Yeah.
Not just for our kids and our dogs and everything, but also for our routine. Like the routine is very important as far as what our day looks like starting the day with exercise, then I take the kids, then, breakfast. Like it's very, you feel good when you're kind of accomplishing those things. So for people out there, who have full-time jobs, they don't have as much flexibility as you and I do. Do you recommend for them to create a routine for their daily lives?
Yeah, I think it's good. Yeah. I mean, in a sense, if you have a 9-to-5 job, you already have a routine, in the sense that you have a structured week, which is, I think, good in some ways. Provided if you like your job, it's better. But you have a routine. But you can add, like in the morning, if you want to do some like meditation, or it doesn't have to take a long time. I think it's good to start with something small and be consistent. And over time, if you like it, you can build up from that. You can start with 5 minutes meditation, then 10, 15, 20, half an hour if you want. Same with working out, going for a walk. Could be writing your goals every day. So I would encourage people to think of maybe 2 or 3 habits they can start implementing on a daily basis, and do it for 30 days and see, if you like it or not.
Yeah.
That's what I do. I like 30 days, like kind of 30-day challenge. I think it's good.
Yeah.
Test.
One of the other things that you talk about is the role that ego plays in emotions. So can you talk a little bit about the role that ego plays and why is it good or bad?
Yeah, I mean, I would define ego as in that case, like anything, how you build your identity as a person. So how you, for instance, your name is part of your identity, your nationality, your body, your job, your friends, your mindset, your thoughts about the world. All of these are kind of your ego, so your identity in a sense. And based on that, if you have, like, for instance, if you have specific thoughts about the world, really act a specific way. So your thoughts are like the OS, operating system of your brain. I like to say that. So based on what you're thinking, you're going to act a certain way. So if you add like these empowering beliefs, wrong beliefs about the world, about yourself, then you're gonna maybe get in trouble over time. If you feel like I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, and all these kind of belief you have, I think we all have to some extent, and you believe into that, you buy into it, it's going to create some issues on your emotional state and also the result you get in life in general. But if you have the belief that, I can learn anything I want, I can become better, I can ask for help, it's okay, or my emotions are, comes and go, and it's okay. If you have these kind of beliefs, it will help you thrive and feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's important what you believe. What you believe about yourself. What is your identity, sense of identity coming from? It's important. Yeah.
Is that related to self-confidence?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, self-confidence in a sense, yeah. Because like the more things you do and you achieve in a sense, the better you tend to feel about your ability to do things. So you will feel better about yourself in a sense. So yes, I would say to some extent.
I want to read you another endorsement that I received, this one from the CEO of Panera Bread and Panera Brands. He says, leading with vulnerability is a superpower that many leaders struggle with. It creates human connection, trust, and unlocks the potential of those around you. This excellent book teaches leaders how to do just that. Filled with stories and research, this is a must-read for any leader. So I hope you decide to pre-order your copy at leadwithvulnerability.com. Why is vulnerability so important for leadership and for work?
Vulnerability allows you to delegate, it allows you to let go, it allows you to let the experts make the call on decisions.
The reality is that I was miserable, but I would hide it to everyone, and I think it's a mistake. I think it's important to open to others, and I was trying to hide it because I didn't want to appear as weak.
It's funny with ego, right? I mean, when I interview CEOs on this podcast, and oftentimes when I ask them what's the number one thing that hurts a leader or keeps them from becoming more successful, most of the time they point to ego, right? When your ego gets so big that you can't keep it in check, and that it's it totally gets out of control. Do you have any suggestions on how to manage that ego? Like, how do you keep that from happening?
I would notice whenever I become like defensive, for instance. Sometimes you want to be right. Ego is kind of, you want to be right. Like, this is who I am. This is my belief about the world, my belief about myself, and I want you to understand that I'm right. So what can help? I think it's to see yourself as a work in progress, like always evolving, and that you want to learn more.
Yeah.
So you're not like fixed. You want to learn more about yourself. You want to become better. And in the sense, you want to learn as much as you possibly can, as opposed to being right. So I like to say, you can either be right or you can learn. So sometimes you just want to say, okay, I was wrong, sorry, I don't know about it, tell me more about this. And to use it to improve and to base your sense of self-confidence based on how much you can learn, or how fast you can learn, or how well you can learn, which is helpful, I think.
Yeah. Sometimes my wife tells me, she's like, you can be right or you can be loving. That's right.
As well, yeah.
Yeah. Whenever we disagree on something, or if we argue about something, and she's like, I can tell you're trying to be right. And in this situation, you could try to be right, or you could just be loving. And I'm like, damn it. How do I argue with that?
Yeah. And you can be, maybe you're right, but it doesn't work. Sometimes you have to, it's just not how it works.
A lot of the times, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me at all. Okay, so it's important to keep your ego in check for basically everybody. If you have if you're in a professional setting, because it can get a little bit out of control. Let's talk a little bit about how the thoughts that you have impact your emotions. Because I don't know, can you control your thoughts? Right? I mean, you could be scrolling through the news, and all of a sudden you have a bad thought, and all of a sudden your emotions are like out of whack. Like, how do you actually control your thoughts so that you get to those positive emotions?
Yeah, so I don't think you can control like all your thoughts all the time, because you have too many every day. But you can, one thing you can do is condition your mind. So as we mentioned before, if you condition your mind to be more grateful or focusing on what you want as opposed to what you're afraid of, what you don't want, then by default your mind is changing. So you will have more positive thoughts because you change the system, right? So if you change the system, then you will attract or will have different thoughts. So that's one thing you want to do, work on. Okay, do I have a good beliefs? Are they serving me or are they working against me?
Yeah, maybe we should talk a little bit about that. Like, how do you actually do that? Because, a lot of people, if you have a full-time job or even not, you're probably, some of your negative thoughts might be, maybe you have imposter syndrome. Maybe you feel like you don't have a good relationship with your leader. Maybe you feel like you hate your job. Maybe, the typical negative things that a lot of people get for their corporate jobs. I think, what is it? The latest number, like 30% of employees only are engaged in their jobs. So most people actually out there don't really like their jobs, which means that you probably have a lot of negative thoughts and emotions and feelings about the work that you're doing. So how do you change that operating system?
Well, for me, I just quit my job. That's how I solve the problem. I don't know, it depends, obviously. I don't know if you're supposed to, just accept everything and just stay where you are. The first step is being aware. If you're already aware of what your limitations are, what beliefs you have, what negative beliefs you have based on how you feel, then you can start thinking, okay, what would be the opposite? What can I say about myself? So it can be affirmations. You can think about something over and over again. It's kind of seems silly in a sense, but it's like, if you see your mind as a kind of a computer, then you're just reprogramming your mind. Okay, I can do this, or I'm good enough, or I can learn anything I desire. If you keep thinking that way and acting the same way over time, it just becomes, oh yeah, actually it's true because I've done it here once time, twice, 3 times. Now it's working for me, so I start believing it. So in a sense, you can do that. Just affirmations, changing your beliefs, repeating the same thing to yourself.
Actually,
conditioning.
Yeah, I do the affirmations every morning with my 2 kids when I drive them to school. So I have a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. And first thing, like right when we get in the car, they know that before I turn on music for them on the way to school, the first thing I ask them, I say, okay, who's ready to go first? And then they both say their affirmations together. And they say, what are their affirmations? They say, I am strong. I am confident. I love myself. Lots of people love me. And I can do anything, something along those lines. I'm strong. I'm brave. They kind of go through those emotions, those affirmations, my 3-year-old and my 7-year-old. And it's very funny to see my 7-year-old kind of like coach my 3-year-old. She'll say, Noah, you should do this. It's going to make you feel better. It makes me feel better whenever I do it. And it's funny because I ask her about that too. And I say, do you do this for some reason? Like, do you notice that you feel a little bit different? And she says, yeah, it makes me feel better. And I say, great. And then they ask me, I do my affirmations and I say things like I'm patient and loving and kind and optimistic. And then after we're all done, then we all kind of clap for each other in the car as we're on the way to school. And I think it's a great way to start the day, right? At 8 in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, that's kind of the first thing that you're doing. I think it makes a difference.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say it's like it's going to solve all your problems,
Yeah.
But I think it's just one tool you have among many, many others. Like one thing would be obviously you want to actually take action toward what you want, like in some ways. But then as a tool, you want to use affirmations to help you change your beliefs and become better and move faster and improve your life. It's not like just one tool.
Yeah.
That's just one of many tools. Yeah.
What's another tool that you think is effective besides the affirmations?
Yeah, I mean, daily habits would be the same, like conditioning, I guess. Taking action, just, I know it sounds simple, but just taking action towards something you're afraid of is kind of the hardest things to do. But we often know what we have to do. If you can actually do it just one time, then you have the belief, oh, I can do it one time, so then I can do it again. So I did cold swimming in winter, very cold outside.
How cold are we talking about?
So, I don't know about the Fahrenheit thing, so I don't know how to calculate, but it would be like outside was -8 Celsius, and water was like maybe 1 or 2 degrees.
Wow.
You can calculate maybe later.
Yeah, so I just put it in the calculator here. So 1 degree Celsius is around 34 degrees Fahrenheit. That's damn cold.
Yeah. So it's not like I love to do it, but I know I can do it. That's the thing, I did it once, I can do it again. So I always say to people, do something one time, do a speech, write a book, whatever. Do something one time, because then and you can build the belief that you can do it again and again and again. Because you did it once, so why not?
Yeah. So that's a good.
That will shift your mindset, in some way.
Yeah. So I like that tool. So do the thing that you're scared of, even if you just do it once.
Yeah, and even if it's small, a small win, something you do. Oh, okay, I cannot do a speech of an hour speech, but maybe I can do a 5-minute speech for my next meeting or something.
Yeah.
And from that, you build the belief. Oh, okay, I am a speaker. I can do it.
Or raise your hand, speak up in a meeting.
Yeah, something.
Ask for the raise, ask for the promotion. do the thing once. I like that a lot. What about the role that the environment plays on your emotions? I also find that this is an important factor too, and I know you talk about this in your book. The environment, kind of your surroundings, things of that nature.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest. For me, it's one of the biggest factor.
Okay.
Like, let's say let's say you're a kid stuck in a ghetto somewhere. You don't know what to do. I mean, if I could, I would just leave. I would just go somewhere else, better environment, because that's going to determine so much in your life. And it's super hard to fight against your environment. I mean, like physical environment, also whatever you're reading. So what you can do, for me, there are three things, I think. The physical environment, like basic people, like people environment, who are your friends?
Yep.
Then you have the physical environment, so your office, how it's designed, or maybe you have some nice design or some affirmation somewhere, something inspiring. And then you have what you consume. So your internal environment, dialogue, what you read, what you watch. And all these three things are really important. And if you're in a bad people environment, you're going to you need to compensate by having, the other two in place, or to move, or to find new friends. But I think it's really very important for people to try to do what they can to have a better environment overall.
Yeah. So it seems like who you surround yourself with, the information that you consume, and also your actual physical environment.
Physical environment, yeah.
And so it sounds like the advice there is if you can't control one of them, double down on the other ones. Like if you can't control your physical, right?
Let's say you're stuck in a bad environment, people are like criminals, and when you are back at home, you just consume like inspirational books, and just for as many hours as you need, just try to change your mindset the best you possibly can, until you have a choice to leave and to do something else, or maybe to find new friends. Yeah, that's what I would do.
Yeah, no, I think that's good advice. And you're right, the environment does make, I think this is why, especially over the years, right, we've seen a lot of companies move away from like traditional cubicles, and they've been trying to create these, more beautiful spaces where employees actually want to show up to work. You see them investing in like natural wood and greenery, creating these spaces, because there's also a huge connection between your physical environment and also the emotions and how you feel. Getting back to something that you mentioned earlier about the role of emotions at work, and I can't remember if you talked about this in your book at all, the role that vulnerability plays. And I'm asking you this selfishly because I have a book coming out in October called Leading with Vulnerability. So I'm curious to hear your take on being vulnerable at work, because part of me thinks that like if you're sharing your emotions, you have to be vulnerable in some way, right?
Yeah. I don't have anything about that in my book. Maybe the next one. But yeah, I mean, vulnerability is like the only way I think to build like intimacy. So I don't know if you have to do that say in the workplace. I don't know about that, but I think you need to be vulnerable in some ways, I guess, even at work at some point. Yeah. If you want to build relationships.
Yeah, no, it's an important element.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe one more question before we jump into this leader toolkit section. You talked about this concept of the hedonic treadmill adaptation. Can you explain what that means and how that works with emotions?
I mean, you often believe that if one day you're going to have something like a bigger house, a bigger car, a better job, making more money, like an ideal partner, then you're going to be, it's going to be it. That's it. I reach a point, I'm happy forever. But just not how it works. It doesn't work like that. For me, everything is about what you do every day, and it never stops. So you have to keep building, nurturing your relationships every day. You have to keep working on your business every day, ideally. So, or you have to keep meditating every day. You can't just stop one day and I'm done,
Yeah.
So I think it's just how it works. And it's a myth that you can reach some point in the future where you're going to be happy. And you might be ecstatic for a while, you have a new car and your house, nice. But after a while, it's going to be boring and you're going to be back to your same level of happiness than before. So it's really hard in a sense to change your level of happiness through external things, or people, I guess. That's work you have to do on yourself to be happier, I think. So, inside job.
So is the hedonic treadmill, it sounds like, and I talk about it a little bit too in the realm of kind of employee experience inside of organizations. So it's this idea that you're pretty good at adapting to stuff. And so if you like you said, you buy the new car, you buy the new house, you'll be happy for a little bit, but then you're going to go back to your baseline of what you're used to. And then you're going to start to look for something else, kind of the next adrenaline shot, so to speak, or the next, dopamine boost. What can I buy next? What new house, what new car? And then again, you'll get that little bit of a spike, and then it's going to go back down again. And so the analogy I like to give, it's kind of like changing the facade of the car without changing the engine. It's not it's not a deep, serious change.
It's like trying to get high. It's like excitement, seeking excitement as opposed to fulfillment, which is more of a long term. Working on yourself, trying to be fulfilled, peaceful, content most of the time, as opposed to trying to get something new, exciting, and shiny.
Yeah,
but it's not going to really fulfill you in a way you think it will.
Got it. Okay, so let's shift a little bit to a segment I like to call the Leader's Toolkit, where we talk about some action items here. And the action items are going to really be focused on how to change your emotions. And there were a couple things that you talked about in the book. I'm just going to list them here. Letting go, changing your interpretation, condition yourself to experience positive emotion, changing emotion by changing behavior, change emotion by changing your environment. And then you also talk about short-term and long-term goals. I don't know if we'll get to all these things, but at least we can start with some of them. And why don't we begin with the first one, which is this idea of letting go. So how do you actually let go, and how does that change your emotion? My conversation with Thibaut Meurisse continues for subscribers at greatleadership.substack.com. If you head over there right now and hit the subscribe button, you will get access to the rest of this conversation, where Thibaut shares specific strategies you can use to change your emotions, including letting go, how to change your interpretation of something, how to condition yourself to experience positive emotion, and several other things as well. Again, that's only available for subscribers at greatleadership.substack.com. And when you subscribe there, you'll get access to one of these bonus episodes every week, a weekly 5-minute leadership hack that you can implement right away inside of your organization and during your leadership journey. And you'll also get access to a weekly leadership guide that I personally write. Again, all of that available only by going to greatleadership.substack.com. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next week.